Good afternoon, Razorback Nation. We are here with our emergency episode of Hogs on the Hill podcast. As the breaking news came out this morning, Sam Pittman is out as head coach for the Arkansas Razorbacks, and Bobby Petrino will take over as interim for the rest of the season. Before we dive into all that, let's give a shout out to our sponsors over at Razor Pigs. Looking good, never felt so fun. Razor Pigs is the Arkansas-born brand, bringing some serious style to the golf course, tailgate, and everywhere in between. From high-quality polos to head-turning hats, they've got what you need to rep the natural state with pride. Found it right here at home and now run by a Razorback loving family. Razor Pigs is where comfort meets cool. So go hog wild and shop Razor Pigs today at razorpigs.us. And our friends over at Scarlet Letter, Arkansas's very own handcrafted spiked seltzer. You can check them out today. And your friend, if you are in Northwest Arkansas, check out the Core Brewery Tap Room, where you can get Scarlet Letter in all its various flavors, as well as their new hard teas. So, Austin, we kind of talked about it on the show this week, depending on how the game went yesterday. We kind of know what was going to happen next. The game went on more of the negative side, kind of what we talked about. Your initial reactions on Arkansas finally pulling the trigger, firing Sam Pittman, and Bob Petrino being the interim, which we assumed.
So that I just want to talk about that for a second. The full circle moment from 13 years in the making. That's just insane. I never thought we would ever be at this moment, but here we are. I don't think he's going to be able to do anything at all this season, right? I think the season's pretty much a wash. But just having him back as the head guy at Arkansas, that's incredible. As far as Sam Pittman, I love the guy. I really do. And I told you guys about it. I'm never going to call for a guy's head, but I told you guys, in the chat and, between you, me, and Hobbs that he needs to go. Like, there was no ifs, ands, or buts. They needed some kind of change. And I hate to say that, though, because I really liked the man. And I kind of hope that they can find some way to keep him a part of Arkansas going forward, but not in a coaching sense. And I kind of floated the idea with you guys about like how Bruce Pearl is an ambassador for whatever that means for Auburn. I kind of hope that like whatever they do, because there's some rumors going around that he's actually retiring, but you would think that they wouldn't fire him if they were retiring him.
Right.
Trying to negotiate his contract down to where they wouldn't have to pay him so much money too. I think that would be preferable, but obviously they're moving on from him. They're going to Bobby Petrino. And yeah, it's a weird thing.
Yeah. That's kind of, I feel that same sentiment. I like Sam Pittman. I thank him for what he's done. He came in after Chad Morris, got Arkansas back to a decent spot, but it was like almost one of those things that ran its course just a little too far. Like, if say you would have made this move after last year, kind of started fresh this year, at the optics might be a little better for Sam Pittman himself. But I think, give it a year or two or, 6 months, let the anger, frustration, kind of mellow out. And I think people will see what he did for this program. And like you said, hopefully he's going to stay around. He clearly has made it established that he's going to move and live in Lake Hamilton, and that this was his last job. We'll see if that's actually the case. But yeah, it's one of those things I think we knew was coming. And like you said, full circle moment to see Petrino back at the helm, even though it is for interim right now. And we'll dive in here, but let me read the statement that was put out from the university this morning. Arkansas has made a change in leadership of the football program with the dismissal of head coach Sam Pittman by Vice Chancellor and Director of Athletics Hunter Yurachek. Pittman was named the Razorbacks' 34th head coach in December of 2019, was in his 6th season leading the Hawgs in 2025. He was 32-34 overall while winning 3 bowls in his tenure. Arkansas is 2-3 this season, heading into the bye week before returning to action next week on October 11th at Tennessee. Offensive coordinator Bob Petrino has been appointed as the Hawgs interim head coach for the remainder of the season. Petrino served as the Arkansas head coach from 2008 to 11 before returning last season as the team's offensive coordinator. And I guess this is a quote from Yurachek. I want to thank Coach Pittman for his service and dedication to the University of Arkansas throughout his time as head coach. From day one, you could tell how much this opportunity meant to him. At this time, however, I feel a change is necessary to put our student athletes and program in the best position to be successful. The goal for our football program is to be highly competitive within the Southeastern Conference and compete for a national championship. As we move forward in the process of finding next head coach, I am certain that we will be able to provide the necessary resources to our staff and team to reach our goals. We will begin a national search for our next head coach immediately, and that search will include Coach Petrino, who has expressed his desire to be a candidate for the full-time job.
Wow, that surprises me. That surprises me because the whole, well, the thing is, it shouldn't surprise me because we all know that, like, how his reputation, I guess. I don't think he was pushing behind the scenes like, Brandon Marcello was necessarily, insinuating at first.
Right. It's like I don't think
but-
Petrino was there trying to have secret meetings with Yurachek and
Right.
saying, all right, hey, get Pittman out and put me back in charge or whatever. But yeah, like if, he spent time here and, if he wouldn't have got fired back, when, he might have been here for who knows how many years. He had part in building our, football, training facilities and stuff. He had a hand in designing that, so why wouldn't he want to, potentially throw his name into the hat, if you will, for that role.
Yeah, exactly. But what surprised me is that how adamant he was about not being a head coach again. That he liked being an OC and just coaching football and not having to do with all that stuff. And that's just a little weird to me. It shouldn't be. But at the same time, feelings can change.
Right.
He could have had a change of heart in the last few months, because whenever he said that, it was more at the beginning whenever he came here. So
right, and he's been back for this is his second season here. Like you said, feelings could have changed. He'd been back here, and he's like, "Man, I really miss this place," et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah, but
so
I don't know, man. You got to think about too. Now, after all this, you got to think about the ramifications of like the transfer portal and whatnot too. I was doing a little bit of back channel looking, people throwing out rumors, and I mean some of the names that I've seen so far are ones that you really don't want to see leave. But I don't know, man. It's hard to not let him go just because of that reason. Whenever you obviously see the team giving up on him, right? Because let's be honest, that first quarter where it was like 14-10, they didn't look horrible.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying the defense didn't look horrible. For them, they didn't look horrible. They held those drives to pretty long drives. They only had 2 in the first quarter. The reason why they had 2 really is because Arkansas's offense just wasn't getting it done. So I think that they were doing okay, and then they just gave up. That's what it looked like to me. I haven't looked at it. I didn't do anything. I didn't watch highlights. I didn't go back and look at any of the game afterwards. I was pretty much just pissed. So I'll have to go back and look again. But there is a real like effort problem / heart problem on this Arkansas team, and I can't completely blame Sam Pittman, although I think the majority of it goes on him. But also the conditions which Arkansas is in, having to bring in all these guys from the transfer portal that don't really care about Arkansas, or they're just here because they think it's a better opportunity for them. And then whenever things start going bad, it just goes all to hell. It's kind of like having mercenaries as an army. You got these guys who are paid to come in and fight for you, but whenever stuff gets bad, they take off. I mean, they got their check. What do they need to die for?
Right.
So it's kind of like that, and I don't know, man. It's a rough place to be in, and like I said, I think the season's a wash. I don't know if they win another game this season.
Right. And that's the thing is, you know, more than likely we're not sitting here talking about this if this is a close loss or even a win. But, we are at the point where, it was a beatdown yesterday. I didn't realize until, diving in the stats and looking at it. This game was over at halftime.
Yeah.
Notre Dame only put up 14 points in the second half. And they were playing a lot of their second strings, backups, and things like that. And to your point, it's like I've seen the phrase used a lot yesterday and today about yesterday is, it was like this team just let go of the rope. That first quarter, okay, it's 14-3. You're still within, striking distance. If offense can come through, score, defense can just stop or two. You're kind of still in this game. But yeah, and I think part of it too is you look at it that, I think this offense had a lot of pressure on, like, if they didn't score every possession, then, what are we supposed to do? Because defense clearly isn't, stopping anything. And so it's going to be interesting. And then what you talked about with, guys entering the transfer portal, I'm sure it's already in the works. Petrino's meeting with the team, et cetera, and going to go forward. And I saw somebody mention, at the end of the day, yes, your head coach is gone and you got an interim. But for this offense, say the offensive side of the football, Petrino was really your coach anyway. Like, I know Sam was head coach, but I mean, the guy that you kind of had more day-to-day interaction with was Petrino. And so what good does it do any of these players to really just sit out the rest of the season compared to actually play? Even if you are going to enter the transfer portal, why not play the rest of the season, get some tape for you type of situation. But, I don't know. I'm not in these kids' heads. It's a different situation if you're on campus going through that and you just find out this morning that your head coach is right. Really, you probably found out more than this morning. But so that's the thing I'm thinking is, like, I don't know if it does these kids any good to just sit out or decide, all right, hey, I'm entering the transfer portal now that Sam's gone.
Yeah. And some of them, well, you got to also think some of these guys really did like Sam, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't separate that from the way that they've performed and how you feel about Sam Pittman. Some of these guys are playing at Arkansas because of Sam Pittman, right? And not just they're not scrubs, right? The good ones. I would probably say a lot of the defensive linemen. I think a couple, especially the ones that are younger. I know that they're here because of Sam Pittman. I think, probably some of the offensive linemen, maybe the ones that aren't backups, that aren't starters, were here solely because of Sam Pittman. And let's be honest, this is the best offensive line, and which is crazy. This is the best offensive line they've had since Sam Pittman's been here. I think that's unquestioned.
Yeah, I would almost say crazy. It took kind of that same level of like that 21-22 season, which was probably the best season Sam had.
Yeah. Well, I would even say I think that the offensive scheme worked really well for that offensive line. But I think this one, if you put toe to toe, position to position, I would probably lean towards this one. Maybe not because they had Ricky Stromberg. That's probably the only reason why I would be hesitant to say that this is the best.
Right.
He was so I'm kind of walking myself back. Yeah. And, I don't know, man. It's just rough. I don't know what else to say. But I can tell you that they're going to have some guys that are going to get a chance now. What's his name? I forgot his name already. Courtney Crutchfield. I mean, you have Jaylen Brown who broke his leg, which, God, that was an awful injury. Let's just
And
be
it
what it
was
is.
fibula and tibula, so,
Yeah, I mean, if you go back and
significant.
watch, which I'm not advising anybody to go do, it came across my feed on accident. It's the only reason why I saw it. But you could tell, like, as soon as it
Right.
happened, you
He
could
goes
tell that
down, he throws that helmet off, and, they bring out the card immediately. It's like,
right.
it was one of those you just knew that it was bad.
Yeah, and whenever I saw it, I thought his knee buckled, but it wasn't his knee.
No.
Um, and so I thought it was an ACL, MCL, something in there, but it wasn't. But I mean, because of that, and because you're going to have guys that go in the portal, you're going to have people like Courtney Crutchfield who are going to get that chance.
Mhm.
You're going to get probably some defensive linemen, maybe, I don't know, get a chance. And then I saw somebody say, over under on Braylon Russell hitting the portal after this.
Hey, they're not wrong, though.
They're not. They're not. So.
Because that was part of the rumors flying around last year about if, when there was before Yurchik came out and said Pittman staying, was that the only reason Braylon Russell was here was because of Pittman. And so that's something to think about, and especially with all that drama last week between his dad and DJ Williams and all that. Like,
yeah,
it wouldn't be surprising at all to see him jump in the portal.
Which, first of all, let's talk about that for a second, because look, what do you hope to gain from that, right? If you're Bishop Russell, what do you hope to gain from that? Because the only thing you're doing is making it harder for your son.
Because if he wants to transfer somewhere else, somebody's like, well, it's kind of like baggage now. It's like, do I really want to deal with that?
Yeah, you're not only getting Braylon Russell, which let's be honest, I think a lot of that back and forth last year had to do with his dad and his family pushing him to jump in the portal, right? I don't know, like, for a fact, but I have some of the rumors going around. I think it had mostly to do with his family wanting him to leave, especially his dad. And you can't do that. You are messing up your son's career.
It's like on par of like with the whole Nico situation and his dad and stuff.
Yeah, like, don't be a Nico's dad. Or Braylon Russell, stand up for yourself, like there's a point where you got to cut the cord and be your own man. And this is whenever, especially when it's so freaking public.
Right.
Like, you can say, I love you, Dad, but you got to stop.
Right.
Or I love my dad, but this isn't how I feel.
Yeah.
This is not how I feel. I'm my own man. I do my own stuff. So that's what, I mean, he's going to have to do it. Or he's going to, ruin his career. Because you just can't be tied down to stuff like that. Can't be tied down to drama, because that's, especially when you get to the next level, they don't deal with drama.
No.
Right? Look at Antonio Brown. He don't play anymore because he was nothing but drama.
Teams don't want to deal with that.
Yeah. And they don't have to deal with it because they got guys just like that all over the place. Or at least guys that can fill in, So, yeah. I don't know.
The other thing I want to talk about too here is Oscar's comment, and that's something to get into, is the defensive play must change moving forward. So how does Bobby Petrino address that with T-Will, or does T-Will get let go now? So that's the next part of this. All right, it starts at the top. As they say, all right, Sam's gone, Pittman's gone, Petrino's taking over now. All right, so if you're Petrino now, do you go to T-Will, say, all right, we've got to do some changes here? Or do you kind of say, all right, play calling's going to Marcus Woodson, who is the co-defensive coordinator? Or has, how is all of that going to work going forward? Because as we've seen through the first 5 weeks, this defense is not good.
Yeah, I mean, you got to change something. Right?
And so, and again, that's the definition of insanity, is letting the same thing happen over and over again, thinking that you're going to get a different result. And so I don't know if it goes to who is calling more plays? Probably T-Will. So do you give Marcus Woodson a chance? Do you let T-Will go as well? Like, I don't know what the next thing is here, but something's got to change.
Yeah, I don't think you can. I think it was either going to be T-Will or Sam Pittman this week. Like, you can't.
And somebody said,
but I don't think you can do both.
Right. And somebody said that they could have seen T. Will being the scapegoat, if you will, for, this week. Let Sam go for a few more weeks and the whole buyout situation. But I mean, again, it starts at the top, so they went ahead and did that. And that's an interesting question here that Tim has: is does Petrino really have the authority to fire T. Will?
Yeah, so that's another thing. You don't really know. And actually, this just popped up on my feed. Brett McMurphy said that Oklahoma State fires their defensive coordinator Todd Graham. So, I mean, they may. Who knows? Because it could be a situation like that. Because it's only been a few days since Gundy was let go. So, and they had a bye week too. I'm pretty sure this week. So, it very well could happen.
Yeah. Well, see, and that's the weird thing. At least we didn't go that route of how they did Gundy, because they fired him on a Tuesday after his Monday press conference. So, like,
it's just crazy to do to somebody you've had for 20 years.
Right. So, actually, no, they did not have a bye week this week. They lost to Baylor 45-27.
That's right.
But yeah, so now that's the next thing to think about going forward. All right, you have a bye week. You got this week off. You go to Tennessee next week. So in between, yes, there's some things you can clean up on the offense, figuring out who's going to replace Courtney Crutchfield, things like that. But I think the big question marks is which is weird for Petrino to handle, but is like this staff has to come together and figure out, all right, on defense, we've got to figure out something. What we're currently doing is not working. So, what's got to change here? And it's you've harped on it all season long. And yesterday it was, again, driving me nuts. If Marcus Woodson, who's historically a DB coach, is your co-defensive coordinator, why is our secondary not turning around when defending passes? Like the number of times you would have avoided a penalty, potentially could have made a play on the ball, like all day yesterday. Like I feel like that's fundamental football, and our guys are just not doing it.
Yeah. At least 3 times we could have had a pick. At least 3 times. 2 of those were called pass interference. One of them was pulled away, even though it was pass interference. Like, what the hell are they doing?
Right.
That doesn't make sense whatsoever. Like, Jordan Young, what are you doing? Julian Neal, what are you doing? Actually, like, Julian Neal was one of the ones that actually turned around and played the ball a little bit, to be honest with you. So I don't mean to pick on him, but those are just the 2 that came to mind whenever I started saying it. But still, like, it does not make sense.
I mean, and that's just one of many problems, but that's, a very obvious one when you're getting PI calls all the time, or you could, like to your point, you could have a few more turnovers on the stat sheet if you would have just turned around and played the ball. So, that's one thing I hope they get fixed fast, because, that's just not fundamentally sound in costing your defense that's already struggling. It's like, all right, we get them in third down situation. Oh, PI, automatic first down. So all that hard work that your defense was able to do just goes out the window.
Yeah, because you got to think too, that what do you call it? Those balls hit the defensive player in the back. So if they turn around, that ball is in their chest.
Right.
Every time. I mean, the easiest catch you can make is a DB. And they were turned around. They were not looking at the ball.
Yep.
If you just turn your head a little bit, look, you can make that assessment. Hey, I need to turn all the way around, or I can still play in this position. And then you have a better look at where the ball is coming from. I just don't know. And it's not like they were getting beat too, because especially when they're doing one-on-ones like that, when they were throwing fades, they weren't getting beat. They just weren't turning around to look.
Yeah. And so,
I know.
part of that too is now, I saw it mentioned too. All right, we're 5 games in. If guys, red shirts are potentially burned, I don't know, how they were managing that. But so, do now you let young guys have a chance? If some of these, older guys that came in, like we've said, the defense has been bad. You're not cutting it. Do some of these younger guys get a chance to get on the field and get some playing time, and see if they can at least go out there and make a play. And that's what I want to see this week is some emphasis on, figuring out what you can do defensively. I know at this point you're 5 games in. There's not a ton you can do as far as it's going to be either schematically or working with what personnel you have. It's not like NFL where you can go sign some free agents to maybe help your defense. So, you're at the point of you got to work with your roster and figure out schematically what can we change that will help this defense. So that's what I want to see, and see if that's addressed this week. I know there's going to be a press conference tomorrow, I believe, with Bobby Petrino and Hunter Yurachek on the whole situation and taking questions and whatnot. So that's going to be interesting. So Tim asked, and this is what we'll talk about next, is do you think we pull an up and coming coach from a smaller school? Do you think we put faith in a big name coach and run with it? That's where all this goes to next is, all right, coaching search is beginning immediately. If you right now, who would you say is your top 3 guys you're going after? Who's your first call? You're picking up the phone for the next Arkansas head coach.
Well, I think the most obvious one is Rhett Lashley. Arkansas guy, played at Arkansas, coached with Gus Malzahn, and has led SMU to the college football playoffs. I don't think they're very good right now. So I don't know how legit that will be. Plus Arkansas will have to pay quite a bit to get him to come here. But I do think they're probably going to go the cheap route. Let's just call a spade. Arkansas has, especially with Hunter Yurachek, has always opted to go the cheap route, except for John Calipari. And that's mostly because boosters like John Tyson decided to supplement part of that salary. So I think they go cheap. I'll just be honest with you. I don't have any hope with Hunter Yurachek being the AD making this hire. So I kind of do think we're going to keep going in a circle, right? We're never going to get over because we're not willing to pay a good coach to come here. As far as new or old, I have a feeling they go old, to be honest with you. Somebody who's been here and done that. I mean, I've heard Dan Mullen is one of the people, which I don't know how I feel about that at all, to be honest with you. Bobby Petrino is also one of those big ones. Barry Odom, which I don't know about that either. It just seems like it's a weird set of coaches that I've heard the names for. So we'll have to see. I would love to get someone who's kind of a newer up-and-comer guy. I mean, Rhett Lashley is that, but I don't know if that'll happen.
Well, and sidebar real quick. Now, think about this because you mentioned it. Does this move of firing Pittman, do you think this necessarily saves Yurachek's job, or do you think by the end of the season he's gone too? Because I don't know how confident I am having him make this next hire either.
Yeah, I don't know. So we haven't had the chance to talk about this either, but the BOT pulled Yurachek into a meeting, and they had pretty much, it sounded like they were pulling him in there to flip what he said at the Little Rock Touchdown Club, which he kind of didn't
clarify what his comments meant.
Yeah, and so I don't think they're very happy with him either, because a lot of people were like, "Oh, the BOT is siding with Hunter Yurachek." I'm like, you gotta read between the lines with the Board of Trustees, because they are a political entity first, right? They're there to make money and make sure the image of Arkansas looks good. The fact that they pulled him in to make that statement to clarify, quote unquote, means that they're not happy with him, right? Just that action by itself. of course they're going to say, hey, you're doing a great job because we have all these other sports that are doing great and blah, 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 this, that, and the other. But that's because they have to say that.
Right.
They have to, I almost said shake baby and kiss hands, shake hands and kiss babies to get people on board with it, to keep boosters putting out the money.
Right. Well, and it's like
behind the scenes, they're gonna go say, hey, I really actually don't like this Yurchek guy or blah, 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 this, that, and the other. It's stuff like that happens. So I don't know the answer to that, to be honest. But I still have a feeling that he may not weather the storm.
Right. And that's the thing, like Trey Biddy said it the best, I think, on his walk and talk yesterday, was that at the end of the day, you dig down to it. This is a football state. We love our baseball, we love our basketball, but at the end of the day, it all boils back down to, Arkansas is a football state. People want to see this football program succeed. And if your AD is not, like Tim says here, it seems like Yurchek has no heart in the football program. It's like he never really cared about it. So, we made these great hires, brought in Calipari for basketball. Baseball is what it is. It's a machine that runs and continues always to, do well. Still got to win the big one, but, is always up there competing. Softball's right there with Courtney Diefold. Soccer's always there. So it's like all these are doing well, except football, which is, supposed to be your main money maker that brings in the most revenue. So at the end of the day, if not enough care or attention's putting towards that, you might be on the out as well. And so I think we'll have to see how this season finishes out. But kind of circling back to it, thinking about candidates, I'm like you. Number one probably comes to mind is Rhett Lashley. I know a lot of Arkansas people want an Arkansas guy. The other name that I want to throw out there that, the more I think about it, the more I wouldn't mind it. And that it falls under that kind of an up-and-comer, but not really, but also has head coaching experience, is John Summerall from Tulane.
John Summerall. That's not a bad, because like I said,
he's got Tulane to a really good spot.
Yeah. And I was surprised when Duke beat them earlier this year. We made those picks. So I was kind of surprised with that. But yeah, I don't think that's a bad pick either. You got some other kind of up and comers. I mean, like I've heard Jeff Traylor too over at UTSA.
Yeah.
As one of the picks. He's not, I guess he's not really up and comer. He's kind of older. But shoot, there's a guy at Penn State, I think, like one of their assistants that I heard, Womack or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's his name. Let me look.
And then also, another name I heard thrown out there from some buddies that were in town this weekend was, what about LSU's D coordinator, Baker?
Yeah, but I would.
But then you're going the coordinator route, which
yeah, right. You don't, because that's what you want. You want someone who's been a head coach and knows it, right? You don't want someone that you're taking a risk on anymore. Like, and that's what I'm saying. You're going to have to pay a lot to get that type of person.
Mm-hmm. So it's like,
and I don't know if that happens.
Yeah. And that's the thing to think about there. And here's a good point. My wife made the point here. She said, I want to throw it out there. Tyson, the company itself, wasn't doing necessarily in the best spot in terms of, revenue, capital, all that fun stuff. Whenever John Tyson helped get Cal, now the company's doing better. That correlation. The question is, hey, John, you want to come help out the football program now that basketball's in a good spot? The company seems to be doing a little bit better. There's some correlation there too. Is like, oh, you help bring in John Calipari, now everybody's buying Tyson chicken, and so your stock's up. You're performing much better and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Weird coincidence to think about, but that is a good point. And so
I don't know about that, because I think the big reason why he put up money like that is because he knows John Calipari, right? So it would have to be someone that John Tyson knows who is a good coach and that they can be buddies and stuff like that. Which I
Right.
don't
Going to
know.
that Rolodex or that contacts list, who do you know that you could be like, hey, you want to come help out? And the two things I want to think about with the coaching search, think about this. I want to knock this out real fast. Can people please let go of Gus Malzahn? It's not happening. It wasn't going to happen. I think he's similar to Pittman. He's a good OC, but I don't know. Like, I think he's past his prime, if you will. Like, yes, he went to Florida State. They're doing a little bit better this year. He struggled a little bit at UCF. Like, I get he has Arkansas ties and all that, but we need to just drop that. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's, was ever going to happen just the way things ended between him and Nutt back in the day. I just don't think, and I don't know if that's necessarily the right move either. And, can we just please say this, Insanity? It's not happening. Like, Nick Saban is not coming here.
And the person that I would probably, because everyone thinks everyone thinks the Waltons, the Huns, and the Tysons. That's what everybody thinks of. But there's one guy who is really, really invested into this Arkansas program, and that's Frank Fletcher, the guy who has all those dealerships down there in South Arkansas. And I feel like if anybody's going to step up into this role of like a Tyson person, it's going to be Fletcher. I don't know if he has any like people that he knows necessarily, or if he's just going to throw money out there. But I know he loves Arkansas football, and he's probably going to, because right now, I mean, like if you look at his relationship with Taylor Green, they have a really, really deep relationship, and he'll do that with certain guys on the football team that he thinks are going to be really good.
I was about to bring that up. That's something that I thought was interesting that Taylor said in the prior to season that him and Frank Fletcher have weekly meetings to talk about business and different things like that. And that's really cool to see that involvement. And I think that kind of shows how much he loves this football program. So that is something to think about. Is guys like that, if they haven't been as involved because they didn't like XYZ, how much do they get involved going forward? And so that's something it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. And so, looking forward, another name that's been out there that I don't know how I feel, just because it's a very out there name, is a couple people asking in the comments. He's like, "What's y'all's honest opinion about Gruden?" That it's definitely would be a splash hire, to say the least. I heard that the wild theory of that you go after Gruden. Apparently, he's had meetings with Coach Orgeron, and he comes on as D coordinator and weird things like that. But I just don't know if that's the right route to go.
Yeah, I mean, if we're being honest, that's I feel like it's more of a circus than a football team, if that makes sense. Because you've got so much baggage that comes with both, to be honest with you. And their personalities are so crazy, and like, I mean, just Ed Orgeron with his voice, it's like I said, it's more of a circus than a football team.
Right. And so that's going to be, I know that name's going to be floated out there, and it'll probably be one of those things that is going to be floated out there until either he comes out and says no or not happening type of thing. Like, does he want, it seems like he's enjoying himself over at Barstool. He might just want to stay over there and have a good time. So another name thrown out there, somebody said, Ryan says, your Chargers defensive coordinator, Jesse Minter, who was previously at Michigan. So, if you look at his coaching thing or his coaching, resume, he came on with Harbaugh in LA. Previous to that, from 22 to 23, he is the D coordinator at Michigan. Before that, he was the defensive coordinators and safeties coach at Vandy in 2021. Spent some time with the Ravens in 2019, 20, 2017, 18. Georgia State defensive coordinator in 13, 16. Has ties to Indiana and ties all the way back to Notre Dame. So that's another part of that. You know, like Ryan says here, he has Arkansas ties. He was actually born in Little Rock.
Wow, really? That's interesting. That's a good one.
So,
And yeah, the Chargers DC, you said, right?
yes.
Got to add that to my list. That's a good
So,
one.
you know, that's another thing is, you know, he was born here. How much does he love Arkansas? How much did he spend time here? I don't know what, you know, his love for Arkansas is, but, you know, that's another guy that's been around, has, you know, that experience in the league, in college. I mean, I don't know. That's another option. And as we go, we're going to see different names pop up. Another name I heard was the USF coach, Alex Galesh.
Alex Galesh, USF. Yeah. Well, the thing is, they were doing really good at the beginning of the year too, right? So I don't know if I would mind that. I'd have to look into it a little bit more. And here's the thing:
USF is his first head coaching job. So in 2023, he was 7-6. Last year he was 7-6. He's 3-1 so far this season.
Yeah, so 7-6, 7-6, 3-1. Yeah, so that's not bad. You kind of have to see how the rest of this season goes out. And here's the thing: you're probably not going to get that next head coach until the end of the season, right? So we've got a long ways to go with Bobby Petrino to see how things are, and it depends on how Bobby Petrino does. I don't think they win another game. I'll just be honest. I don't see it happening. There's not another team on the schedule. I mean, look at Mississippi State nearly taking off Tennessee, and Tennessee nearly taking off Georgia. And then Georgia, well, here's the thing. Georgia also got beat yesterday by Alabama, who lost to FSU, who then lost to Virginia. That's just to say college football is weird.
Right.
College football is weird. So it's kind of hard to do all that right now, to think about it, especially when these coaches are still coaching, because you don't see the whole season yet. So
you don't know if they're going to go down here and spiral or if they're going to continue the success. But, I mean, if you look at Alex Galesh, so, you know, previous to being the head coach at USF, he was the offensive coordinator, tight ends coach in Tennessee in 2021. And that season, he helped Tennessee shatter 8-team single season records, including points, total offensive yards, touchdowns, points after touchdowns, total first downs, rushing first downs, and fewest interceptions thrown and passing efficiency.
Right.
Previous to that, he was at UCF, where he was co-offensive coordinator with Heupel. You know, then he was at Iowa State as tight ends coach, Illinois as tight ends coach for a few years. He was at Toledo. He was a graduate assistant at Oklahoma State under Gundy. So, and, you know, they showed he went to Ohio State, but they showed, you know, a few weeks ago, you know, his journey, you know, from being from Russia and then coming over and then making this, you know, career for himself. So that's an interesting idea thrown out there too. Kind of the Heupel-esque tree of that type of offense. You know, what they've done so far this season has been impressive. You know, you knock off, you know, teams like you have, and, you know, you open the season, upset Boise State, you beat Florida. That's some impressive resume builders, to say the least.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty dang good. But you also kind of have to look at the past two, 6-7, and stuff like that. It like I said, it's going to be hard to talk about that right now until we see the entire product, because he very well could still go 7-6 or 6-7. We don't know. And I don't know did I just say this, but Bobby Petrino could also do good, right? So I don't know. It's almost, I mean, I think it's fun throwing out these names, but I think it's also kind of useless at this
Right,
moment in
because
time.
like you said, it's good to speculate. I mean, as the statement said, the search is going to be immediately, but you can only do so much. Like, yeah, you can maybe talk to guys that aren't coaching at the moment, but you're not going to have these in-depth conversations with your Lashleys, John Summeralls, guys like that are currently coaching, because they have more things that they're trying to figure out right now, and in season. But Steve-O here
Right.
asked a good question, and I think there's two answers here. He's like, do you guys want an offensive minded coach or defense? And here's my thing. I would prefer an offensive minded coach, but if you do want to go the defensive route, you need to make sure you can work together to line up one really good offensive coordinator. Because that's the
Right.
thing you see when you hire defensive head coaches. The defense is really great, but then sometimes the offense isn't the best. It's they struggle to put up points just because it's not their forte. So that's why I think I personally would prefer an offensive minded coach, and then you go get a really good DC.
Right. Exactly. I kind of feel you with that too. Um, here's the thing. Also, some of the greatest head coaches ever were defensive minds. Like Nick Saban was a defensive guy, right?
Well, and if you do go
It,
the defensive route, do you have the patience and let them build compared to, that's the
yeah,
thing.
that's all, that is very true, because whenever you have an offensive guy, you're going to get results not necessarily immediately, but faster, right? Because you're going to have an offense that's going to be more dangerous. You're going to put up points. People are going to like it. But whenever you have a defensive guy, you're probably going to be a little bit slower on the offensive end while the defense builds and whatnot, like you said. But that's what they're going to have. The whole thing about Arkansas getting better is they're going to have to shell out the money. Right. Because depending on what you do, if you get an offensive guy, he's probably gonna spend quite a bit of money getting an offensive coordinator and his offensive staff ready. And then the defensive staff kind of, gets kind of put on the back burner, to say the least. I think that, hey, they need to open up the checkbook, say, hey, we're going after this guy for head coach, and we're going to let him have as much money, not maybe, within reason, to get an offensive staff and a defensive staff, because the only way you're going to be able to have cohesion like that is if you pay the coordinators what they're worth. And if you don't, then you're going to have one half of the football that's not good.
Right. And that's where you kind of read between the lines, if you will, is like, hopefully the sign of, all right, going ahead and getting rid of Pittman now, is that, like, to your point, within reason, money's not an issue, because you could have waited and let the buyout go down and save $3.1 million. But no.
Right.
All right. He's out now. And, it is to be determined if they did work out some type of, quote unquote buyout type of situation for him to step down. I don't know. That'll probably come out in the coming days. But, that type of situation is this kind of showing you, like, all right, money's not going to be too much of an issue. We're paying the buyout, and of course that's going to be structured out over a period of however many years, how they typically do buyouts like that. But is that a sign of saying, all right, we're going to do what it takes to get there? And I think that's something to look at. And like Ryan here, he has two good points. One, to like what we were just talking about. He said, look at Coach O at LSU. He had phenomenal coordinators, and they won a championship. Maybe not, the best coach himself, but if you surround yourself with great coordinators, you can have that success. And to follow it up, he says, whoever the hire is, it has to be the right one this time. Another bad hire could really set us back further. We have to get the boosters backing so the coach knows that he can go out and, be competitive in this area that is pay to play and get players and that type of thing. So, and that's the thing. Whoever is going to be the next coach, and I think we've talked about this before, has to be willing to, play the game, if you will, with NIL. We see guys like, your older coaches, like your Sabans, or even like a Pittman guy is like not really wanting to play in the area of NIL and, work and that type of situation. That's why, Saban retired. And that's why I think you see some problems happening at Clemson with Dabo, is like, you've got to play the new era of football. and that
Right.
is NIL and transfer portal. You know, you've got to
Right.
be able to excel and work well in those two aspects of what is now college football.
Right. I think we're talking now that you said that, I think we're completely missing the whole point about who needs to be the new head coach. We need someone who embraces NIL. And here's the thing too. Are we going to be able to find that person with Hunter Yurachek as the AD at Arkansas?
Who's been
Because
up to this point anti-NIL for the
right. He's the Dabo Sweeney of ADs. Right. Then, like, there were some people, floating around having Dabo Sweeney come here. If Dabo Sweeney doesn't start using the transfer portal and embracing NIL, then no, I don't want him here. But if he decided, hey, I'm going to do this and I'm going to go into the portal and rebuild and blah, 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 this, that, and the other at Arkansas, heck yeah, I'd have him. I think he's a phenomenal coach. But I just don't see that happening with Yurachek, because I mean, he's let he's kind of just mismanaged Arkansas edge to the point that it's not even really a thing anymore. And they're like, oh, we're just going to put all of our money into revenue sharing, but revenue sharing is now the base. Like, it's like I've said it more than once on the show. NIL is always going to be the difference maker.
Right.
You don't have good NIL, you're not going to make a difference.
Right.
You
could. It's like you could have a kid that really wants to come here, but if they're getting a better NIL deal somewhere else, that's going to win out. It's gone are the day and age of guys that want to come to Arkansas just because they love Arkansas.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Unfortunately, and to be honest, it's whatever. But here's the thing: there's a difference between getting kids who want to come to Arkansas and neglecting the talent you have in state, right?
Right.
So I don't want kids who want to be at Arkansas for that sake alone, right? But if you got kids that are out there 4 stars, borderline 4 stars in your state, that's what you need to go after. And I know people are like, well, the in-state talent isn't great in Arkansas. Yes, that is true. That's why we don't have 50 guys that are 3 stars and above in the state of Arkansas. But you still have 20. You still have good talent in the state. It's just not as much.
Right.
And you need to keep that good talent in the state. And I think that's where Arkansas kind of got away from it. You look at that interview they had with what's his name? Evan Goodwin over at Bauxite. He's the 4-star offensive tackle in the 2026 class who decided to go to SMU over Arkansas. He did an interview with DJ Williams, and he was like, they recruit earlier, get to me earlier,
and put more priority. That I saw that same thing you're talking about. And DJ Williams was like, hey, I'm not trying to start anything. He said, I just want, from your perspective as an Arkansas kid, like, what would make you want to come to Arkansas? And and the kid was like, whether it's right or wrong, or he was trying to watch his words, but to your point, he said, well, make me more of a priority. He is like, come in and offer. He was like, well, they came in and offered, but then I didn't hear too much after that.
Right.
If you want your in-state talented kids, then go out there and make them a priority and offer them, to his point earlier, but then also, make them seem like a priority instead of being like, all right, here's an offer. We're Arkansas. You're from here. All right. Type of thing. So.
Right. And so, like, those type of guys, like the Carius Kearns, and I forgot the guy who went to OSU in the same class as Goodwin. Those are the guys you need to keep. Those are the guys you need to go after. And I don't understand why you have these 4-star guys in the state that you just let go, and instead you go after these 3 stars in Texas or in Florida or Georgia. Right. Yeah, I don't know. Plus, I don't know if you want to talk about it, but they've already had 1 decommitment.
Yes. Wide receiver
Kimian Henderson,
yes. And he's now projected to flip to TCU, so.
Yeah. So, I mean, with that, we're going to have that. We're going to have guys leave on the team. We're going to have this recruiting class just probably be decimated.
Fall apart. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to fall apart. We're going to have probably the worst recruiting class we've had in a while.
Right.
Because this is happening 1/3 of the way through the season.
We're going to be that team next year that we talked about with, like, say, your Memphises and other teams that, you're going to probably have 60, 70 plus new kids on this team. Like, that's just what it's going to be next year. Don't know if it's going to be that high, but you're going to have basically a whole new team. Yeah, some retention will be great. Whoever comes in can, keep some of the talented guys on this roster to stay. And hopefully that's kind of something these kids consider is like, okay, yeah, Pittman's gone. Yeah, you're here before him or for him. But keep an open mind to the new coach coming in and just hear what they have to say and see if that lines up with what you want to do, type of thing. So, yeah. Our resident Kentucky fan in here saying, hey, Kentucky will give us Stoops. Cal worked out well. Think about that. I think I'll pass on that one, but
yeah. No, and Stoops has got a way too good of a gig in Kentucky to come over to Arkansas, where we actually have expectations for the football program. So
right, it's not basketball state where he has his 7-3, 8-4 year or his years where he goes 8-4, 7-5, and Kentucky fans are happy with it because they're at least always competitive. They lose some games, but they're not necessarily getting blown out all the time, type of thing. So it'll be interesting to see. OTC here says John Gruden to Arkansas. Even John Daly wants Gruden to Arkansas. So
that would be weird. It would be weird. I don't know how that would turn out.
Sure.
It would be flashy. I don't, because we've compared this to
another name I saw floated out there this morning. What about if somebody said, what if you bring back Kendall Browse as head coach?
You'd see a lot of people. I feel like a lot of people either be really irate that they've done that, or that they've they completely flipped the script, because whenever he left, people hated him, even though he scored like they had 32 points a game under Bryles or something like that.
Scoring offense, yeah.
They had a good scoring offense. He was the offensive coordinator here whenever they went 9-3 or 9-4.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's that would be interesting.
Yeah. So lots of things to think about. We'll probably hear there's going to be a lot of things to talk about on Thursday with our regular show this week. But yeah, it's been an insane, morning so far. In the next few days, we'll get more answers, kind of get more ideas of, what things are going to look like for the rest of the season. Like I said, you'll have that press conference tomorrow. That there will be some questions asked, some hopefully things answered. So we'll see. I mean, it's going to be, on one end, I hate to see Pittman go just because I like him as a coach and, what he did for Arkansas, but maybe he just ran his course a little too long. But also, I think it was the right move at the end of the day. It's never good when you fire somebody, but, I think with the state of the program, that's what you needed to do to kind of move on and, keep the program growing.
Right. So I don't know. That's like you said, you kind of have to cut off whenever you prune trees and prune plants, you have to cut off perfectly healthy pieces to make sure it grows right. And that's kind of what you have to do. And to be honest, we don't have perfectly healthy pieces. So this is undoubtedly the right move, even though it's going to be hell for the next, probably year or two to deal with. And we're going to be dissociated from Arkansas football for a while. At least we got John Calipari and I
was about to say, yeah, because you're going to have those growing pains with a new coach as well. But go ahead and say what you're going to say.
at least we had John Calipari in the Arkansas Razorback basketball team to fill in that gap. I don't think Arkansas is ever going to be a basketball school because there's too much emotional ties to the football team, not like Kentucky. We can say we're moving on to basketball, but there's always going to be that love for Arkansas football too. But at least we have him to lead us through the winter, and then we got Dave Van
and then
Horn in
hand
the
off
spring.
to DVH in baseball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
we'll keep you guys up to date as we hear more. This will be our show for today. A little bit earlier than expected. I figured this news would come out today. Austin and I talked about that, and it did. Maybe not as early as I would have thought, but kind of,
I figured after they got done with church, like after everybody got out of church, and that's kind of when it happened, around noon.
It's like let's drop this news here now. So
yeah. So now everybody has something to gossip about after church.
Right. Any final thoughts before we get out of here on everything with today and going forward?
No, I think I pretty much covered everything, man. Like I said, it's something that need to happen, and I hate to say it, but I'm glad it did. I hate it for the man, but I like it for our football team.
Yeah. It's unfortunate whenever you have to fire a coach and anything like that, but when it's for the better, that sometimes is the case. So, with that, we're going to wrap up here. You heard it here. We broke down the news with the Pittman firing, Bob Petrino taking over. I will agree. I want to hit on this too real quick. Ryan said, prayers for Jaylen Brown. We talked about the injury, but hopefully, he has good recovery and can make it back better than ever after, the broken tibia and fibula yesterday. But yeah, so, we'll keep you up to date. If there's any other crazy splash things, we'll go live for that. But until then, we'll be back on Thursday for our regular show to talk about. It'll be a little bit different show just because we do have a bye week, no football game this weekend. So we'll be able to dive in depth into some more other things, get Hobbs' thoughts and stuff on everything, coaching search, what maybe news we have out there, rumors, things flying around like that. So before we get out of here, don't forget to like and subscribe to the show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Go across our social medias and follow those at Hawgs on the Hill, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, wherever you find that at. So we're going to wrap up here. Like I said, crazy day. Pittman out, Petrino in for the rest of the season. We'll see how it goes. We'll see what changes are made this week. We'll talk about it more on Thursday. So everybody have a great rest of your Sunday afternoon. Have a great beginning of your week, and we'll see you guys on Thursday for our regularly scheduled episode.